Dear students, let us start the discussion on today's newspaper, that is 4th May 2016. The first article is related to the India's tax policies. Now, any deficit, it is the difference between the expenditure and revenue of the government. When expenditure is greater than revenue, it becomes a deficit situation. Now, the fiscal deficit, the government wants to keep it constant to maintain the strong macro fundamentals so that investors can be attracted to the country. In this case, if you see the revenue side is actually worsening, and it means that as revenue side is not increasing and fiscal deficit is becoming stagnant, so there is a compromise which is being made on the expenditure side. Generally, the compromise will be on the revenue expenditure, which is mostly a social expenditure on various governmental programs which is meant for promoting the health, education and employment of the people. So such as MG, Narega, ICDS schemes, etc., they will face a cut. So this situation is going to worst affect the poor people. So let us analyze this situation. Now, among the direct taxes, corporate taxes and income tax are very much important. The government SOPs for the corporate companies is increasing, and the tax foregone from these corporate SOPs is around 66,000 crores of rupees. And further to this, the tax to GDP ratio of India, it is stagnant for the past 5 years. And direct taxes are actually coming down, and indirect taxes have increased more than 30% in the same period. So this clearly shows that a shift is happening from direct to indirect taxes. So indirect taxes, they apply equally for the poor and rich people. If you talk about sales tax, if you talk about excise duties, service tax, everything is an indirect tax. A rich or a poor man have to equally pay the same tax. So it's going to worst affect the poor. And second is, as indirect taxes increases, inequalities are bound to increase. So, in these circumstances, if direct taxes are observed, the corporate taxes are decreasing. Though on the paper the corporate taxes are around 33%, in reality the corporate tax realized on the profits is around 24%. It is due to the loopholes that exist in the taxes. And as the profits of the company are increasing, the net taxes paid by that company is decreasing. The 500 crores and above profitable companies, they are paying actually 22% of the corporate tax. And public sector companies pay more than the private sector companies as percentage of their profits as corporate tax. And the second thing is, coming to the personal tax or income tax. In India, only 4% of the people file the income tax returns. And most of these people, half of them will show zero returns. And second thing is, people who are filing the income tax, 11% of the people, they constitute the 85% of the payments. And more than 85% of the people, they do not pay, or they pay very less than 1.5 lakh rupees. So it means that the tax base is too narrow, and the tax collections are very poor, the poor performance of the taxes. So in this context, the Thomas Piketty, who wrote Capital in 21st Century, what he said is the rich in India has to take the responsibility for its development. The poor payment of the taxes is going to increase the inequalities and bring in the social disturbances, which is not good or conducive for the business. So here, the recent declaration of the tax data is very important for India to understand the patterns of wealth, patterns of inequalities, the trends in growth, etc., which is a very positive development. Added to that, the data provided on income foregone by the government due to various tax concessions given also helps the people to understand where the governmental choices lie. Now coming to the Iraq's situation now. You know that there is Mosul, the second largest city in Iraq, it is under Islamic State. So, this month, it is the Iraqi forces are supposed to invade Islamic State and to take the control of the situation. But however, Iraq is going through a great turmoil now. Let us try to understand that. Now, let's take the demographic profile of the Iraq. Shias, Sunnis and Kurds. So Shias are majority, and once the Iraq occupation is done and Saddam is overthrown, then Iraq has become close to Iran. And all the ruling governments in Iraq now, they have the support of the Iran and also the United States of America. Now, the first Prime Minister, Nouri al-Maliki, he has supported Shias and he has played the sectarian politics, which has led to the alienation of the Sunnis and the Kurds. And there is a demand for autonomous state by the Kurds, along with the Kurds in Syria and Turkey. And there is infiltration of the Islamic State in the Sunni-dominated areas because of the alienation of the Sunnis. So in this case, the Haider Ali, who is the present Prime Minister, Haider Ali Abadi, who is the Prime Minister now, he is expected to build a national unity among various fragments. So, but he also faces the tremendous charges over here. The first one is the corruption in his government. Added to the corruption, the instability from the fall in oil prices as the governmental expenditure towards welfare is decreasing, and extremist violence on the other side is increasing. So in these circumstances, yesterday, the a Shia cleric, under him, the Shias have marched towards the green zone, which is the center of the power in Iraq. So what they demand is to form a non-sectarian technocratic cabinet. So now the existing sectarian cabinet, which is filled with the charges of corruption, to be replaced with a non-sectarian government. That is what is the thing which has been discussed. Coming to the Indian ports, you know that there is an Indian Maritime Summit. Then Prime Minister said 1 lakh crores of investments are expected to flow into the maritime sector, and Sagarmala project is aiming to create 6 major ports along with the hinterland connectivity, and all these things are going to come up, and port-based development of the communities, everything is coming up. But what is the problem with the existing port? So how we need to address these? Now coming to this, you have the riverine ports. In these riverine ports, especially the Haldia port, they have huge silt accumulation. And coming to the Orissa, it also faces a similar challenge. Along with this, it has highly outdated technology. So that's why the too much of manual involvement is necessary, which is delaying the operations. And coming to connectivity in the Jawaharlal Nehru port in Mumbai, so there is a lot of congestion with regard to the connectivity onto the roads. So the inward and outward movement of the vehicles, they are congested even for the 12 kilometers and more. So, and the major problem of the newly developed ports within the public-private partnership is lack of proper understanding and clarity between both the partners. So in this case, some ports are not at all remunerative to the private partners because of the authority, the tariff authority of the major ports. So the tariff authority of the major ports, it is keeping the tariff at very high level, which is diverging or taking the traffic away from the major ports to the minor ports. So to the possible extent, if the market forces are allowed, that can be streamlined. Now coming to a job for every Indian. So let's remember these two statistical data, which is very much important. Last year already there was a question on jobless growth. This year statistical data also is so important that the jobless growth can be a question again in a different perspective. Now coming to this, the Labor Bureau, it started collecting the quarterly statistics on the employment. And also official employment data is computed once in 5 years. So in this case, the Labor Bureau, what it does is this. What it shows is this. In 2015, only around 1 lakh of the jobs were created. In 2009, it was around some 9 to 10 lakhs. It means that there is a drastic fall in the jobs created. So, and again, if you see the official employment data, in the 2009 to 15, this particular period, 2004 to 2009 period, which is called as economic boom period of India, there is actually fall in the growth of the employment. So this trend shows that India is moving towards a jobless growth. So if carefully observed over here, as every month 1 million plus new persons are entering into the labor market, unless India revives its growth towards employee intensive sectors, it cannot fulfill the gains of its demographic dividend. So in this context, encouraging the small and medium enterprises that are labor intensive and providing for greater incentivization for skilling of the semi-skilled and under-skilled labor, these need to be given priority. So the underlying social and economic policy always shall have a notion of job creation. So that is what this article talks about. Now coming to voting in Uttarakhand. So recently, let's take the brief history. Recently, President's rule is imposed in Uttarakhand without a floor test on the charges of horse trading in which Chief Minister himself is involved. So in this context, the matter went to the High Court, and High Court has indicted the centre on and recommended for a floor test. Then the centre challenged it in the Supreme Court, and Supreme Court also is asking the opinion of the centre to conduct the floor test. And Supreme Court is of the clear view that the floor test is the ultimate test. Here the major legal question is this. One way the President's rule is in operation. When the President's rule is in operation, how can, without giving the life to that particular legislature, how can we reassemble? If we give the life to the legislature, we also shall give the life to the government of the day. So this is what is the legal question which is existing over here. Trade facilitation panel soon. Now if you observe carefully in the WTO, RCEP, or with regard to the India EU, India Australia, in various trade agreements, India is being criticized as obstructionist, and also India fears that there is no proper strategy for it to achieve on these circumstances. So India is constituting a national committee on trade facilitation to decide on various matters related to the trade and tariffs in negotiations at WTO or at the other countries. Now added to this, Nirmala Sitharaman also has brought in an analytics dashboard that will provide for a real information or real-time information on export, import and other related data of India. Now in US-Pakistan relations, now US has promised to supply F-16 fighter jets to Pakistan under its foreign military financing scheme. Now, it was to be approved by the Congress, and Congress said that the F-16s which will be provided for free of cost to Pakistan will be used against India rather than helping US in counter-terrorism. Now, in relation to this, the United States has asked Pakistan to pay for this as FMF is not available. So, on the other hand, if you also see the recent events, the United States is more engaging India on the Afghanistan issue, as Pakistan itself has failed to bring the Taliban to the negotiation table. So, in this context, this is an important development which we need to understand, because India has vehemently opposed to the supply of F-16s to the Pakistan by United States of America. Now, overtime for the government staff. Now, especially in the railways and defense, the overtime allowances, they are reached almost double and reached 1,000 plus crores. So in this context, over this head, the expenditure need to be reduced. Already Defense Ministry has taken various steps, but not the railways. So in this context, the Cabinet Secretary has clearly stated the governmental functioning shall be oriented towards results and efficiency rather than employees spending time in office and paying the money for the time spent in the office. So the emphasis shall be on the results. Now coming to the Indian Express news. Now the first thing is, there are two important reports. One is UNCTAD report. So the UNCTAD report, what it says is this. The more than $220 billion of various firms from developed and developing countries stationed their money in the tax havens. So one unique trend is, previously this money has majorly come from the developed world, but this money this year has majorly come from the developing world. And coming to the IMF, And in its Asia Pacific Outlook report, it has given at around 7.5% of the growth rate forecast for India. On the other hand, China was given around 6.5%, and Japan was given 0.5% for 2016. So it appears relatively stable or relatively a good forecast for India. But if you carefully observe, what are the factors that facilitate India's growth or decelerate these particular things? With regard to the facilitation, the private consumption is going to drive the India story. Especially the private consumption is bound to increase because of the cost or because of various factors over here, especially the private consumption and also low energy prices. Sorry, the private consumption due to low energy prices. And next is what can retard its growth, especially the poor investment climate or investment sentiment and credit flow with weakening of exports. These are the negative factors. So enactment of the GST, labor sector reforms, these are the things which the government has to take forward to achieve this particular growth. Now coming to the Gujarat recently has provided for the reservations for the economically backward classes to the tune of 10%, making the total reservations to reach to the 59%. So here, it can be declared as anti-constitutional by the Supreme Court on various grounds. One is, in India, the constitution do not allow for the economic backwardness as a criteria for reservation. Now, if you see here, in India, the reservations are provided on the criteria of social exclusion, not as a favorable benefit or favorable economic benefit till date. So the only claim for reservation is from the from the promotion of the social justice. And the second thing is, the reservations have crossed the 50%, where in Indira Sahani case, the Supreme Court has clearly stated the total reservation shall not cross 50%. So, as it has reached to the 59%, it may be violating the conditionalities. Now, coming to the Beijing terror conundrum. Now, understand, recently, Ms. Isa, the visa was issued by India for the World Uyghur Congress leader, and later it has withdrew that. So in this context, China also has rejected or else also did not support India on including the Mansoor Azhar onto the global terror list. So what is the situation over here? Now if you observe in China's western Xinjiang province, so it has got the central connections or Central Asian connections, and it also has close connection with the Afghanistan and Pakistan. Now there is an there is an internal disturbances which are going in this province. So the China wants to make a barrier across the Karakoram so that the Central Asian unrest will not split into Xinjiang. Because if you see, most of the West Asian fighters are from Central Asia. So it means the Taliban entering into the Xinjiang or ISIS entering into the Xinjiang province. These are a nightmare to China. So in this case, China sees a Pakistan army as a strategic partner to build this wall between the two. So the China-Pakistan relationship in this perspective may irritate India-China relationship. In this context, if India has taken any adverse action, it will make the China's fear come true. It automatically leads to playing an active role in Kashmir and the Northeast. And China was known for giving shelter to the Northeast terrorists previously, especially in the Nagaland. So in this context, India, if it has to take an action, it shall not be based on the tactical benefits, but the strategic framework has to be very critical. So that is what is the Beijing terror conundrum talks about. Let's revise the news again. The taxation and inequalities. So the corporate sector benefits, the fall in direct taxes and rise in indirect taxes, decreased social sector expenditure, all these shows the choices of the government are more towards the well-off rather than the poor. And coming to the Iraq. So the Iraq present government, it is facing the crisis from multiple sides, that is corruption, Islamic State, and also the instability in the regions. And coming to employment trends, the the Labor Bureau's report shows the fall in employment levels. And this jobless growth has to be curtailed by giving impetus to the small and medium enterprises. And coming to infrastructure, so the Indian ports are facing a major challenge from silting, infrastructure bottlenecks, mechanization and automation, and also the confusion in the PPP agreements. So these have to be liberated from so that the ports can handle the greater work. And coming to US-Pakistan relations, USA asked the Pakistan to pay for its F-16 flights. And with regard to the civil services, extra allowances, especially the overtime allowances, shall not be given much. And the civil servants have to work for efficiency and quality, not just spending in the office. And coming to the president's rule, the Supreme Court has declared the floor test is the only ultimate test. And coming to the trade policy, to improve or to promote the trade facilitation agreements, a national committee on trade facilitation is getting constituted. And Beijing's terror conundrum in Xinjiang province and unrest of the Uyghurs, it made the Beijing to have a close relations with the Pakistani army to curtail the flow of the Central Asian and Afghanistan fight into the Xinjiang province. So it may have the impact on the India-China relations too. And coming to Gujarat quota, so it is violative of the 50% norm given in the Indira Sahani case, and also the economic backwardness is not determined under the Article 16 of the Constitution as a criteria for providing the reservations. And coming to economic growth and development, more than $221 billion is stationed in the tax havens this year. That is what is the UNCTAD report says, and most of the money is coming from the developing countries. And Asia Pacific outlook of the IMF predicts the 7.5% of the growth rate for India. And added to that, it provides for a moderate growth for China around 6.5% and a decelerating growth at 0.5% in 2016, followed by a negative 0.1% for in 2017 for Japan. In this, the private consumption, which is fueled by the lower oil prices and wealth creation, and the GST implementation can fuel the India's growth rate. On the other hand, the rigidity in the private sector and lack of the credit flow and weak exports can decelerate its growth, which need to be addressed. These are the articles for discussion today. Thank you very much. All the best.